Hello and welcome to the Bro Force Squad podcast. I am your host, Jeff Hornacek. Today we are doing another one of our Westworld episode reviews. Episode 8 is the most recent one that I just saw. I have no idea what happened. Alongside me, as always, is Alex English. And of course, joining us today is the mad scientist, Brian Banner. Gentlemen, welcome. I was not being sarcastic when I said I don't know what the fuck just happened. Banner, what did just happen in that episode of Westworld?
Blah.
That about sums it up. Alex, let's get your take.
Wow, he took the words right out of my mouth. I don't even have a comeback to that. Welcome, gentlemen. I think by far this was the episode where Jonathan Nolan's intelligence made us all feel like tards.
Yep.
Right? He fed us little crumbs along the way, make us feel like we could figure out what was going on, and it's gone, to quote South Park. That was just, it completely blew my mind. I'm still intrigued. All the storylines seem like they're going to have excellent resolutions because they're definitely revealing stuff as we go along. But, man, that was confusing. And to quote Dolores when she's in the desert freaking out, she's like, are we here? Is this happening? Where am I? Like, that's basically my feeling as the viewer.
So if you're listening at home, thank you for joining us. We, as is tradition in all these, we are going to spoil the fuck out of this episode. Although when I say spoil
we might not, because let's be honest, we have no idea what's going on.
I was going to say, I can tell you like what I think I saw on screen, but it might not actually be a spoiler. As is always the case, but more so today, if you have any theories or even at this point could just kind of summarize what I just saw, please interact with us on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter. Even just email us, broforcesquad@gmail.com. Because like Alex said, this was one of those episodes where we start to get probably a little bit too confident about being one step ahead of Jonathan Nolan and being able to predict the show and theorize about it. And then they do what they did this episode, especially in the last 5 minutes, and basically just tell us, why don't you sit down on the couch, shut up, and watch this because you don't actually know what's going on. Now, Banner...
Yeah, the only thing that's more confusing than this show is the X-Men timeline.
Or women, am I right? What's going on with them? What happened?
Mel Gibson knows.
Yeah, that's true. God, if I had that power.
Yeah, just drop the 20-year-old reference.
That's a What Women Want reference, and that movie is a sponsor of the pod. Go rent What Women Want at your local Blockbuster. That's still a thing.
Or Hollywood Video.
Yes, please.
Ooh, Hollywood Video. Nice.
So the easiest way to digest this episode is probably to break it down into the 4 different story arcs that happen. Let's start with what's happening in, quote-unquote, the real world.
By the way, sorry to cut you off. When you say make it easy, it's kind of like when your calculus professor would be like, no, really, this is how you figure out differential equations. It's really simple if you look at it, and it's still not simple.
Yeah,
so
this is just simple fluid dynamics. And I'm like, that doesn't sound like a thing that exists. So let's start with.
Break you up there.
I put this in air quotes. The real world story of the Delos employees and specifically Bernard and Teresa, and I put the real world in quotes because I wouldn't be surprised if who knows where this is going.
They're all robots.
They could be. Segue perfectly into us and the revelation at the end of episode 7 that Bernard himself was a robot, as Alex English and a lot of you at home predicted. When he decides to, well, not he doesn't decide, but he murders Teresa. So that's how this episode starts, him sort of coming to terms with him being a robot, Robert Ford wiping his mind, and basically what's that setting up between Robert Ford and Delos. Now, Banner, the way that episode 7 ended, it was a very cool reveal in the sense of the way that they framed it and how long they had sort of played it out, but what do you think that means going forward? Obviously now Bernard, through a series of events that Robert Ford has sort of uncovered, still gets to retain his job with his memory wipe. So Ford is pretty much running this from both ends now. What does that mean, do you think, for both Delos' plans for the park and Robert Ford's plans? Because right now he's basically unchecked. He's like Kobe the night he scored 81 on the Raptors. Like, who's going to stop him?
Not Jalen Rose.
Damn right, not Jalen Rose.
First, I think that the way that Ford controls Bernard is fucking insane.
Yeah.
Like, that was incredible, and the actor who plays Bernard, it's slipping my mind.
Jeffrey Wright.
Jeffrey Wright, yeah.
The
future Emmy winner.
Yes.
Yeah. The way that he was able to go from freaking out, oh my god, I just killed this person, and then stop mid-tracks when Ford was like, nope, hold on, let's calm down for a second. I need you to clean this up. You need to fix this. Stop, like, mid-cry was a phenomenal bit of acting. The way, as far as what's going to happen next, I have no idea. Ford is clearly running the show. It doesn't matter what plan Delos has or what Delos wants to do. Ford is going to do what he wants to do, and he's going to do whatever he needs to make that happen. I also think, and there was one scene that made me think this, so I wrote it down. Tessa Thompson's character, Charlotte, I think she might be a robot also.
I've theorized that. In English, I want to get your take on this. First, this question, then I obviously really want your theory. But if Charlotte is a robot, is that just basically making this, as far as like a story goes, just too easy for Robert Ford? Like, is that why she needs to not be a robot?
Yeah, I agree with that to a point. I mean, we know so little about the outside world, and we almost know nothing, really. We have no idea where they even are, where she came from, how she got there, what this company is really about, what their true goals are with this bit of technology. All we know is that, you know, she's basically there to make sure that Robert Ford doesn't one day wake up and say, you know what, I'm just gonna die and take all this with me.
Yeah.
Like, that's basically her main job. As for the dynamic with Ford and Bernard, you know, one of the criticisms of this show that I've seen, and early on, a lot of these like highbrow critics were saying, "Oh, well, you know, how can you bring humanity to this TV show? We don't even know like who's a host and who's a human, and it's hard to like connect with these characters." Watching the Jeffrey Wright, it's like it breaks my heart, man. Like the way he's acting, and they keep coming back to this idea where, you know, they talk about, well, if feelings are something that you remember and you feel, and to me they feel like I experienced them, and maybe you did experience them, but they stay in our mind the same way, like, what's the difference there?
That scene?
You know? And, like, there is no difference. Like, why does it matter? If I'm feeling and experiencing that and feeling a certain way about something that happened in my past and it affects who I am moving forward, then it's the same damn thing. It doesn't matter. That whole monologue, that exchange was, I mean, we get it, Anthony Hopkins. You've already won the Emmy. Chill out.
Take your foot off of the Emmy's throat. They're dead.
Yeah, they're just gonna vomit while they try to write your name down and pass out. Like, we get it. You're good.
But that scene you're talking about,
please do more of that.
With Bernard, where he says, well, what's the difference between your emotion and mine? I actually was thinking about it from the perspective you said, and I'm like, well, that's a good point, because if, like Banner was saying, if he's this emotional about it, even though he's not supposed to be able to feel anything, like, that's exactly how humans act. I couldn't really tell you, and then of course he says this is what Arnold basically struggled with, like, the humanity that the hosts feel, and how, like, they're essentially the same as us, even though we're supposed to be intellectually superior. And we're seeing that...
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and we're seeing that kind of with Maeve now, too, which obviously we'll get into in a second. But
well, that's what I was going to say, is it's kind of interesting, because now we have two characters that both know that they're robots. Bernard knows he's a robot. Maeve knows she's a robot. And it's interesting that we have, they're taking two different kind of takes on it, where Maeve goes, yeah, okay, I'm a robot, I don't care, I'm getting out of this place, I'm seeing what the real world is. And Bernard is like having compassion and is hurt by what he did and is being more of a human about being a robot, whereas Maeve is accepting the fact that she's a robot and saying, okay, now I'm going to basically fuck up everybody's world and everybody's day that created this and is keeping us here.
So just to confirm, because I need clarification on something with Bernard going forward. So when Ford does that slight memory wipe of him and deletes some of the things that he saw and knew, is Bernard now consciously lying to Ashley Stubbs, which we talked off pod, great name by the way? Is he consciously lying to him about Teresa and basically telling people that he's not a robot when not telling them, but acting like he's not a robot when he knows he is? Or did Ford legitimately remove all that information from him, and he's now literally just playing it like he doesn't remember Teresa, and he doesn't know that he's a robot?
All right, so I actually have a take on this. While I was watching the episode, I thought it was very cool. They spend a good bit of the first 5-6 minutes of the episode kind of talking about talking. Bernard and Robert Ford are talking through this realization, trying to make him kind of give him some sort of direction into how to feel, right? And then from there, it transitions to, okay, now here's what we need to do so you cover your tracks, because this can't come back to, you need to be a good little servant like you've been up to this point. Be very loyal and cover your tracks so that we don't get in trouble, because here's what we're trying to do here, right?
As Matt Geiger would say, when you kill someone, you need peroxide and a shit ton of lime. Continue.
Yes. Also, when you clean a sink.
Yes.
Same ingredients.
Multi-use.
And so then they go into, this is what you have to do to kind of clean any sort of evidence that you ever had anything to do with this woman. And also, I'm going to remove these, like, sentimental things that you experience with her, hooking up and having, like, these deep chats and,
right.
Basically all of this stuff when they showed them earlier in the season kind of hanging out together in her apartment. I'm going to remove all that because there's no need for you to feel that pain.
So
right?
the scene where he was burning all the letters, that wasn't just to remove evidence. That was actually him kind of clearing his memory of all this.
So I thought it was just like he was collecting evidence. I thought that was just solely physical evidence. But then I think that's the reason why, because of how Ford kind of told him to take this experience and process it moving forward, when Ashley Stubbs is like, hey, I know this is extra special to you. I mean, it must be extra painful to you because I know you guys were hooking up. It's my job to know these.
Yeah.
It's like, it's my job to know these things, right? I'm one of the main security dudes. And I think Bernard legitimately was like, oh, we never hooked up. I mean, I knew her, but, like, we weren't like that. Like, he just didn't, because Robert Ford legitimately told him, like, remove that from your brain.
That's what I was wondering.
I think that's how I took that.
That makes sense. I didn't know if Bernard, because he has some ulterior motive or mission he's on for Ford, is actually playing this where he's like, I'm going to deceive the Delos employees, or if he legitimately is not even naive, he just does not know what's going on because it's been tangibly erased from his memory. So, but I needed to know that going forward because the rest of the way he acts, I'll look at it all very differently, knowing that he actually doesn't know what he's saying or that he's purposely lying to people.
He also forgot that he killed Elsie.
Yes.
But did he, though? Because, like, isn't in that very moment...
Look, yes, he killed her because she wasn't naked and I was half right.
Okay, but here's my question, and this can probably be the last thing we talk about with the Delos employees for now, but when he asked Robert Ford, have I ever done this to anyone before, and Ford said no, was he lying like the sick fuck he is, or was he actually like, no, you didn't kill Elsie, she's just in like a closet somewhere?
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like, usually in TV shows, the trope is, if they don't show the person die, they're not actually dead.
Correct.
Right? It's like the opposite of a Disney movie. Like, in Disney movie, if somebody falls off a cliff, they're not going to show their blood and guts. Like, you can assume they're dead. Well, in a rated R HBO show, or rated, I guess, mature because it's TV, it's kind of the opposite, right? Like, they have the budget. They need to show some violence on television. They're not afraid of it. And it seems like a character like Elsie, who was actually becoming very endearing to the fan base, from what I could gather.
I love her.
Definitely on this podcast.
How is she going to react if she's not dead to the fact that Bernard, A, attacked her, and B, Bernard's a robot?
Well, if it results in her not dying, probably pretty well, right?
But here's the other thing, too, with the timelines that's really fucking with me. They make it look like when she's in the house, she calls Bernard and he sees her on his cell phone while he's up in the office.
Yes.
So that's why I'm so confused if literally 30 seconds later he's behind her getting her in a chokehold.
Exactly. Thank you. I don't know what the fuck that episode was,
and that's
but I'm so angry.
And that's not something that they can just not explain later, and I'm worried, and I love the guy, but J.J. Abrams is on the periphery involved with this show, and I'm worried that he thinks that's one of those things that you can just sweep under the rug, but that's like really cheating fans, especially in the moment.
What's his, like, theory, his whole thing, it's like the box that you never open, right?
Yeah, something like that.
You guys ever read about that? Like, his whole theory is like, well, the greatest mystery is like the box that you never open it, so you never know what's there. It's like, no. That's not the greatest fucking mystery. What are you talking about? That you need to tell me something.
I think the biggest problem is, like,
guys, we're like 15 minutes into this podcast, and we're only 15 minutes into the show.
Okay. So, next topic, we have a couple. So we have the Westworld.
Wait, we're still on Delos, right?
Yeah, we're still on Delos. I think.
Okay. Lee Sizemore, the stupid British guy. What the fuck kind of a narrative is he writing where this guy's eating his own leg?
It's important, man. Okay, that's like a really big deal.
For a second, I thought I was watching The Walking Dead.
And
Yeah.
I
I was really afraid because I'm a huge hater of that show, as you know. And I was like, oh no, what happened? And then I was happy to realize.
And
Well, they both come on Sunday nights. I can see how you would mistake that.
And I love how when Charlotte comes in, he doesn't realize that what he's doing is like bitch work. He's like, no, this is important. She's like,
Right.
but it's not though.
They keep bringing that guy back. Like, what's his point? I don't get his character.
He's a bridge character because now he's gonna bring Dolores' dad from the first episode or the first couple episodes back.
Mm-hmm.
So he serves a purpose. He's not, I wouldn't say a main character, a big character, but he's gonna serve a purpose at bringing the dad back.
I
somehow.
think
I don't know.
there's
He was
something.
the first guy we saw like freak on screen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
Guy, I
something.
want to meet my maker. It's like, oh, okay.
I think there's
Chill
something
out, bro.
kind of metaphorical about his character arc so far, and maybe it's even symbolic of like the downfall of Delos, or maybe even Robert Ford, where he's someone who walks in a room and acts like his dick has already been there for 10 minutes in the beginning of the show. He's like way overconfident. He doesn't value anyone else's opinion, and now you see him get subjugated and put in his place in such a demasculating way that he's literally doing like the Westworld equivalent of me like walking up to your computer and emptying your recycling bin. Like, it's such bitch work, and he's so been put in his place that I think I don't know what it is yet because we don't know how everyone ends up, but there's something kind of metaphorical about that, I think, tied to Delos or whoever is going to end up like basically losing, for lack of a better term, at the end of this. How like
Losing the game that we still don't know what it is.
yeah, that we still don't even
Yes.
know who the teams are and like what if it's a ball or a puck or what it is. So
There's some sort of net involved, I think.
all right, I said
Yeah.
before this episode there were 4 story arcs in this show. I'm already having trouble remembering the last one because my brain is fried so much. But I do know that another one of them is Maeve. So if we can't get to 4, then my fucking brain cells have just been deteriorated. So Maeve's storyline, it's like moving the slowest of all of them, but I also feel like when there's any type of progress, it's like very rapid. So like her character will basically tread water for a few episodes, and then all of a sudden will do something crazy. I still don't know.
Slash someone's throat.
Yeah.
Yeah, fucking cold.
I still don't know why she wants to leave, other than like, my life sucks. Maybe that's enough reason to leave. But in this episode, we see she can now basically manipulate the other hosts in the park. But how the episode ends, where the Delos employees come in to get her, does she like want to get captured? Did she just not really have a plan and decide like, I'm going to try and kill everyone? Like, what is going on? What's her end game? English, what do you think?
I thought this was actually, like, of her storyline, which was my favorite thus far, I thought this was the weakest in the sense of I wasn't that big of a fan in, like, how quickly, I understand they have 10 episodes, so they have to get this in, but, like, all of a sudden she figured out that there's an explosive charge in the back of all of these cells, which,
it's really
I
convenient.
don't know, like,
okay.
what do you guys think of that, by the way? Is that like, like...
First off, talk about like shoving it down my throat exposition. Like,
Yes.
Literally
and that
just
happens from time to time because, again, they're limited, right?
which that's fine. As a Marvel fan, they do exposition in some of the most obvious ways possible. But even for this show, I was like, guys, we could have done that a little bit better. Like a technician saying it, like they could have whispered it to each other, and that would have made a lot more sense than what we did here.
And, like, when did she learn that? Like, when she's just, like, playing around with the computer, all of a sudden she's just like, I've just learned, I've read the entire internet. I now know.
It's in her
Yeah. Also,
So,
if you
like,
need
when they raised her intelligence that high, like, that's when she knew because her code was, like, her intelligence level was so high that she actually knows
but
deep down, like, what she's made
yeah,
of.
maybe she can like run diagnostics on herself or something.
Right?
I don't really know what that means.
Something like that.
Well, and what I don't understand is how did she get shut down, but then she wasn't shut down, and then she
I
killed
interpreted she
Sebastian's
wasn't. Her
throat?
and I can't remember the Asian technician's name.
The Asian guy is Felix, and the other guy is Sylvester.
By the way, real
Sylvester.
quick, Sylvester, who is the worst actor on Westworld by far, I just saw him in a CarMax commercial. Like, not CarMax the chapstick, CarMax like the place to buy a used car. And I saw him on the
okay.
commercial, and I thought, this is more his speed. Let's keep him in these and keep him out of my Westworld.
What if that's his resume? Actually, CarMax commercial only regionally showing in 3 states, and
Jonathan
fucking
Nolan's
HBO prestige TV show.
That's one of those
it's
things.
like 3 a.m. Jonathan Nolan's flipping through channels. He comes
Yeah.
on Spike TV and he goes, "That's my guy.
That's one of those
That's
things.
my guy."
That's one of those things where when you put on your resume and you interview for another job, they're very suspicious because they're like, I feel like there's a big jump between these two. Is this actually what you were doing at these companies? Because going from CarMax commercial to fucking Westworld, like there should be, I feel like, a few things in between these two.
Yeah. By the way, his next project is a CarMax commercial.
Thank God. I mean,
The chapstick. Yeah,
it's good to kind of remember where you're from. You know, we'll just swap out one of these vowels.
Agent's like, listen, I thought I called CarMax again. I didn't, and then it just so happened CarMax was filming a commercial and they needed one extra guy, so
CarMax,
you always have chappy lips.
CarMax saw the commercial and like, my God, he can pronounce very close to our company's name incredibly well.
Yeah.
This is a tangent even for us. We're being derailed, but honestly, I feel like with this, but I really do feel like with this,
our brain matter's gone because this is terrible.
this is our best review yet. I feel like with this episode, that's really all we need to focus on Maeve with. Let's get to
I think it was definitely the weakest, just because the exposition was a little bit on the nose, and I thought the story moved a little bit too fast. Like they take like 3 episodes to kind of slowly develop, and all of a sudden it's just like this is happening and this is happening and this is happening, and it's like whoa, slow down. But I'm still excited to see how that story is going to come to a conclusion, at least at the end of season 1.
All right,
I want to get into the last one. Because we're gonna mold the. I'm taking over this show, Jeff. We're gonna take the last 2
before the show. Real quick, Banner. Before the show, I said there were 4 story arcs, and when I said that in my head, I had 4. I guess William and Dolores I was counting as a 4th.
Yeah, William and Dolores and the Men in Black. But we're gonna mold those together because we talked a little bit off air about this. We've got some debate here.
Good.
So first off, let's go, Jeff. What do you think's going on with William and Dolores right now? Obviously, they made it to the Valley Canyon River place, but the Ghost Nation attacked everybody and just really is just laying waste to anybody that comes near them.
Yeah. Well, first off, the Ghost Nation is like Kevin Hart. They're fucking everywhere, and you're sick of seeing them. They just show up everywhere.
Samuel L. Jackson-like?
Yes.
Yeah, but I'm never sick of seeing him.
Agreed.
Kevin Hart, I can agree with.
Yeah. And The Secret Life of Pets was where I had too much of him. But I digest. So 2 things about the William and Dolores storyline real quick. So her flashback, or flash forward, or flash some fucking direction that she had when they found that canyon town, and it shows the burnt down or destroyed or just like the top of that church steeple. We all saw that earlier in the show when Robert Ford was talking about his narrative he was going to write. So, and to me, it did not look like he was in that canyon area when that happened. So I'm incredibly confused. And if one of you can, before I even make my second point, can provide the slightest bit of insight onto what that means, I would love to hear it.
Can't do it.
I'm going to just one quick thing, because I thought the exact same thing about where the church was in this episode did not look at all like where the church was in like episode 2 or whenever we first saw Robert Ford there.
Right.
And while I hate that this may be the reason why, that simply could be like, hey, like, we just weren't on that location anymore. It's a TV show. They have a budget.
Okay, I get it.
It could be something as stupid and as simple as that.
But is it supposed to be?
Or they maybe filmed it from the other side, so there's a huge cliff there, whereas in the first scene we saw it facing out towards the desert.
And that's fine. But if that's the case, then it is the same church, right?
Yeah, I think we're supposed to believe that.
I think it's the same church.
Yeah,
so
I think we're supposed to believe it.
If she's flashing back, and we're to assume that old Robert Ford is in the present and William and Dolores are in the past, how is she flashing back to the church as it's just the steeple? And then also in the future, it's regressed again to that.
Exactly. Yeah, that was the part where literally my temples started hurting, and I was just like, I don't understand what's going on. And then Dolores had her, like, crazy just meltdown talking about what is happening, where are we, is this now, are you real? And at that point, I was like, that almost feels like how fans are probably feeling in this very
right.
moment.
And
I see how they put that in there.
That leads me right into my second point, which I want to hear what both of you guys think about this. So there is, at this point, I would almost venture to say the majority of people think that William is the Man in Black in the past, based on what I've read on Reddit and IMDb. Now, Banner, I know you disagree, which is good for the discussion on this show, but...
No, well, I need to clarify this. I disagree this episode. Last episode, I was 100% on board.
And next episode,
before that,
you may be driving the train.
Person. Episode 5, yeah, they're the same person. I have literally flip-flopped every episode since William came into the show.
Okay, but what that kind of brings me into this question I want to pose. Based on everything we saw this episode, which this is the one that really, it almost feels like it was designed to fucking make all the people with the theory like question it at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of keep them away from guessing whatever will be the end game of this show. But what is more confusing right now if you try to piece together both arguments? William is in the past or a different timeline, or William and the Man in Black are in the same timeline? Which do you think is harder to explain to someone as the case right now? Because I think it's almost harder at this point to explain that, even though I agree with it, to say they're in separate timelines, simply because they haven't interacted. So you could say they're in the same timeline, they just haven't seen each other. Because right now, that like with the church and I don't know, Dolores' like development as a host, she would almost have to either have plateaued or basically regressed where the Man in Black sees her in the future. I can't formulate words anymore. I need someone else to take over.
Banner?
All right, I developed this tonight, and I had it read tonight. I just watched the episode tonight. I'm not quite as fresh as Hornacek is off of watching it. I watched it about an hour ago. I think that they are separate timelines, but up until this point, we have always assumed that William and Dolores are first. Then the Man in Black is 30 years later, and the Man in Black is William. I am flipping that, and I'm going to say the Man in Black comes first, William and Dolores come later, and William is not the Man in Black.
Wow.
Couple of things. Yeah.
The
exactly.
crazy thing is, I don't think that, but I mean, they could do something next episode that plays into that. Well,
mainly, we don't have any proof one way or the other. We have a lot of speculation, and obviously we're reading into literally all of this. But what I saw in this episode is William, he knows about the maze. He has to. On the train, they saw the little logo on the coffin thing. Dolores keeps talking about going to this place. I think that the maze starts, or that town has something to do with the maze. The Man in Black hasn't made it there yet. He's trying to get there. Then they made the comment of, he had that whole long spiel about how my wife died, and my daughter said that it was my fault that she killed herself, and I went to kill Maeve's character and the daughter to see if I felt anything, and I didn't, blah, blah, blah. But that's when I learned about the maze, and that was only a year ago or 2 years ago or something like that. Not 30 years ago when he first got there. So they can't be the same person if he knew about it 30 years ago, but then he just learned about it. That doesn't make sense to me.
I guess the argument for that could also be that, by the way, that Ed Harris speech was his Emmy submission tape. Congratulations.
Absolutely.
I don't think they have enough Best Actor categories to give all of them one, but they'll figure it out.
Even our Carmax guy, I mean, he's doing a phenomenal job. He's doing the best job that he can do.
Everybody is acting their balls off.
Let's throw him a Nickelodeon Teen Choice Award.
Yeah.
Way to just totally discredit that. Like, you want him to get slimed? I'm offended.
I would say, going back to your point about how William is not in the past, I still stand by the logo. I don't think they make that obvious of a distinction between the logos, and every time the old logo every time the other logo is referenced, not the actual logo of the show that we see on all the advertising, but the other one we've seen in the show, it's always referenced in something in the past. For example, you may remember we had a flashback with digitally re-enhanced Anthony Hopkins to look young, and he had a lab coat on, and it had the other logo, the old logo.
I agree.
Right? So
yes.
That's clearly, unless they're, reverse aging, which, stop, that can't be a thing.
The logo thing, How do we know what's the old logo and what's the new logo?
Because we saw young Robert Ford have the
No,
old
see, that
logo.
doesn't work for me. That's not working for me.
What do you mean?
Maybe he was just wearing like some old lab coat that happened to be.
He's had that old thing laying around.
And that
it was
old
Throwback Thursday.
and he was just wearing that old face that young face that he has.
Yeah,
Just
it was Halloween. It was a mask.
You know what? I'm gonna look young today. Think I'm gonna hit on the
that's
intern.
Why I find it super intriguing, and I think nothing can be completely discounted when it comes to theories on this show because it's so awesome the world they've built and how you can theorize, and there's all these different little nooks and crannies there you can look and find evidence, and so I think that's awesome. So hey, awesome to you for having that theory, and I actually can't wait to rewatch this show when I know what happens. We might not even know. They might not tell us everything by the end of episode 10. It's been renewed after all.
Guys,
but I think it's going to be incredible for rewatchability because of all these theories and all these different areas they can take it to.
Oh, definitely. I just thought of something that I really want to ask you guys about, and every time I have a question like this, I think, like, obviously, I don't, like, notice things that no one else notices. I'm not that intuitive. But every time I, like, ask something like this, I feel really stupid when people say, like, yeah, that was basically, like, they beat us over the head with it. But, Banner, what do you think about this? So I think part of what this episode did for me was start to sort of foreshadow much more explicitly William sort of becoming this more calloused person, this darker person who you could eventually see as the Man in Black. And part of that is when they find that kid who they said was sent by the Union to basically kill them. And obviously William is like, bro, he's like dying, Dolores, like stop. And she goes to get water for him. Did he basically like metaphorically and maybe even like literally twist the knife or twist the arrow on him to kill that guy? And when she came back, he was like, oh, I don't know, he's like super tired or whatever. That is like, if that's the case, and if you guys interpret it the same way I did, that's definitely them not even foreshadowing. That's like, yo, this place is kind of starting to fuck this dude up who just 4 or 5 episodes ago was this fawn who was so naive and like didn't even want to hurt the bartender or the guy at the restaurant they were at, and now he's twisting arrows to kill 17-year-old kids in the middle of the desert.
That's what happens when you have sex with Dolores. She gets in your head, man.
Women. He's putting the pussy on a pedestal.
Yeah. I definitely saw that as well. And if I didn't have this other theory of flipping the Man in Black to the other timeline, yeah, you can totally see him turning into the Man in Black. And I honestly thought, like, when he was like, look, he's dying, like, we can't save him, we need to get the fuck out of here, and she goes to get water, I thought he was going to pull out a knife, or as she's walking towards the water, you're going to hear a gunshot or something like that. Yeah. I thought that was going to happen.
And to Alex made this point, I think 2 episodes ago. I just think with the people we know behind this, like, they don't do things, like, on accident. Mm-hmm. It's just kind of the way I interpreted that. Now, maybe, honestly, in 2 episodes...
And Alex, I think you said this before, too, that the Man in Black, if he is William... Like, yeah, that's a reveal, but that's not the reveal. Like, they're going to be like, well, yeah, duh. Like, that's obvious. And everybody's going to be like, oh, my God. And then they're going to throw this other thing at us. Yep. And we're literally going to pass out because we never saw that shit coming.
That's kind of where I'm at right now. I want to bring something up. There's a line of thinking that the maze and and Arnold are basically just MacGuffins to throw us off. What do you guys think about that?
So I've asked this question. I was going to ask this next, so I'm glad you said this, about Arnold a lot. So there could be a theory that you could conceivably put together where Arnold isn't even real, where he's basically like, right. Maybe Ford had this...
He's Robert Ford. That's what I said 3 podcasts ago.
Maybe Ford made up Arnold as almost like this yin and yang, and he can constantly like win favor with the board and be like, how come Arnold only sends these really passive-aggressive emails about someone drinking his Red Bull in the company fridge?
Like a Mr. Jackal and Dr.
He's like,
Hyde.
I don't know, man, but I'll talk to him and tell him that's fucked up, you know, that he shouldn't send those. So I could see Arnold not even being real. I could see Arnold being one of the characters in the show right now, and we don't know about it. And then English, I don't know if we had this discussion off pod or if it was on the last episode. I could see Bernard being a literal recreation of Arnold, and half of the scenes of him talking to Dolores are actual Arnold.
Right. I like that theory a lot. The only part where that kind of falls flat in its face is if, you know, are we under the assumption that everybody else that works there had no idea what Arnold looked like?
Right.
You know, because then wouldn't they be like, oh, that's young Arnold 30 years later? That's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Why is he still alive? So, but yeah, I do like that theory.
And what was
has anybody brought this up, or has anybody thought about this? Is let's assume that Arnold at one point was a real person.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But obviously he was super, super smart. He disagreed with things that Robert Ford did. Could Arnold have taken his consciousness or his brain, wrote it into code, and put it into these hosts? And now, but the hosts have to develop that, kind of grow from a child. So now 20, 30 years, whatever in the future, they are manifesting back into Arnold. And now you have the real battle we were talking about earlier. We don't know what the game is. The game is between artificial intelligence Arnold and Robert Ford.
So he's basically like the virus that's been spread around, and Maeve is like
correct.
The
virus is Arnold, who was a person, but somehow was able to transpose his mind into these robots. I know this is getting way out there and way science fiction and probably overthinking it, but
yeah, I mean, this show's not weird at all, so
yeah.
This show and The Nanny with Fran Drescher, I think, are both on like intellectual equals. As far as...
Oh man, yeah, I could see that, and that would be like the ultimate like man versus machine, I guess. Like, in order for machine to win, they still need to have the, lending hand from man. I don't know.
Alex, what was the second?
It'll be interesting.
What was the second question you asked right after the Arnold theory? I can't remember. But
if Arnold and the Maze are basically just MacGuffins to throw us off, to make us try to figure out all these theories. Because, I mean, rest assured, like, I think these guys knew what this show would become on Reddit. Mm. They would be, I mean, they're living in the same world as us, right? When some horrible, tragic event happens, Reddit immediately, like, within minutes are like, we're all detectives, let's figure this out. So they're like, why don't we design a show that basically forces all of these people on the internet to try to solve it? But we're gonna be one step of them the entire time. So even though they may be guessing these little things that we're putting there, we're obviously making it obvious enough for them to guess. But they are never gonna be able to guess the final thing that we're actually been doing in front of them for the whole time because they were focusing on this other stuff.
No, that's a great point. I mean, how do you keep people from solving the plot? Like, you make them think that they're solving a completely different thing. And if that's what is the Maze and who is Arnold, and that's literally like, it's just smoke and mirrors basically to keep us distracted while this story plays out in front of us, that would be some next level type writing, and I would not put it past the people behind this show. In fact, I kind of hope I'm being fucked with in a disgusting way.
I think one of those is going to be a MacGuffin. One of these is going to mean something. I can't tell you if it's going to be Arnold. I can't tell you if it's going to be the Maze. One of them is something, and one of them is nothing. And
well,
that's all I got.
That is very Alice in Wonderland-y, and I think a good note for us to go out on. If you're at home listening and we missed something major, which definitely could have happened, English is giving me the one mo again symbol.
Because I have a little surprise that I didn't tell you guys about.
Oh, I love surprises.
One of our biggest fans at The Real Mrs. English.
Wow.
Submitted some questions. I have not read them.
Very good friend of the pod.
We can honestly give one-word answers or just say, wow, that's really stupid. We don't want to raise our self-esteem too much.
No, I like these. Thank you, Mrs. English, for chiming in as well.
So Real Mrs. English was like, if you guys don't talk about these even a little bit, then you're not getting any for the next month. So
we got to talk about them. Yeah. We got to talk about them.
Yeah, fellow bros help bros out,
Got you, bruh.
So I haven't even read these. They might be horrible. In fact, they probably are. Maybe they're not. I don't know. I don't want to get in trouble.
They can't be as raw as Banner's notes for last week's pod.
They can't be what?
Don't
be talking shit. You loved it.
I thought that was a pretty hilarious way to start the last podcast, personally. I appreciate any show notes are always great. All right, here we go. First one. She says, they've talked about Ford's hosts remembering things from past assignments. Just before Ford clicks erase memory after Bernard cleans up his mess with Teresa, in parentheses, which Ford says, I know you can do this. Does he know this from past work?
Oh my god.
That's the emoji that she is.
That is like...
Bernard remembers strangling Elsie, so he, like Ford's other hosts, is remembering things. Will this play a role in future episodes? They mentioned Bernard has been there a long time, so if so, do you think a Bernard flashback will show Arnold's accident? I think we touched on that a little bit.
But here's why this is such a good question, and this is exactly kind of the point where you said about the writers. So the best way for and this is what Maeve is starting to do, if Robert Ford does not really have as much control over Bernard as he thinks he does, or if Bernard is like becoming more and more sentient and autonomous than Ford believes he is, the only way that the host can use that to their advantage for whatever agenda they have or just to become free is to not let Ford know that. So if he's starting to retain things that, because what's your level of confidence anytime you see any technician like start trying to like program one of the hosts anymore? I'm like, that's not fucking working. Like, stop.
Yeah, and those little tablet things are cool.
Yeah, I'm like, it's
honestly,
doing
here's
nothing.
my answer to her question. The little tablet things are fucking awesome. I want one.
I love it. All right, let's move on to number 2 before we dwell too long on that. Great question.
That was
question
a great
there,
question.
Real Mrs. English. All right, here we go. Bernard is shown privately talking to Dolores and deleting their conversations and telling her not to tell anyone about him. Do you think the voice Dolores is hearing is Bernard's and that he's acting on his own, or has Ford put him up to doing this too? Along these same lines, if Bernard is indeed doing this without Ford knowing, do you think Arnold has found a way to communicate through Bernard, and that is why he's doing it?
Banner,
Goes along with the first one, I think.
Banner, you can go first. I went first on the last one.
It's definitely Ford. It has to be Ford because Ford controls everything, and his control over Bernard seems to be remarkably stronger in a weird way.
I think what you just said is exactly why it's not Ford. Why would Ford need another host to tell another host what to do when he's already been shown meeting with Dolores? I think those scenes are one of two things. Exactly like Mrs. English said, it's either Arnold subconsciously in Bernard making this happen, or, and English brought this up last pod, I think a lot of those scenes are actually the Arnold in the past, and Bernard is a recreation of him. Because like English said, if you look at those scenes, Dolores is always wearing the same type of garb, which was what were perceived to be her original loop in the park. And also, although this is like not as strong of a point to theorize on, Bernard's clothes look a little bit more old-timey in those scenes where he's talking with Dolores than they do present day.
I think Bernard's just a hipster.
Oh, 100%. He lives in Brooklyn.
Yeah, he wears his glasses like halfway down his nose. It's like they're not reading glasses.
And that's so he can dramatically push them up onto his nose.
Yes, correct. That's what gets the Emmys. All right, this third one, I just kind of glanced at it while you were responding to the last one because your answer was boring me. So she says, why do you think the man in black is trying to get to the center of the maze to set the hosts free? Do you think it's to free Dolores because he fell in love with her? Actually, that's really gay. She mentioned love, so we can skip on to number 4. She says, Maeve and her daughter were killed by the man in black when he came back to the park after his wife died to see if he could be evil. He says for a moment, Maeve was truly alive, as in feeling pain, and that's when the maze first revealed itself to him. Does this mean the man in black had been visiting the park over the years but never knew of the maze? Which, Banner, I think you should take this one.
Yeah, I think he had been visiting it, and I think that he did all the storylines and he had his fun or whatever. I don't think he knew. Fuck, I don't know.
Here's what I don't get about that scene, and again, maybe I missed something glaringly obvious, but him, like, killing her, I get that from, like, a personal journey standpoint. Like, I wanted to see what I was capable of. But it just seems way too weird that she just walks outside and dies, and, like, oh, in this massive field, there was this maze carved into the ground. Like, either you would have seen that walking up, or independent of, you don't have to walk in and murder her and her daughter to see the gigantic maze carved in the dirt outside of her house. Like, how are those two things correlated? Him testing himself and seeing the maze. It just seemed like an unbelievable piece of plot contrivance that she walks outside of the house and dies in the middle of this maze carved in the ground.
Or maybe it's part of the actual game, right? Like, sometimes when you're playing games and you reach different levels and achievements, like, the environment can be changed, right? Like, all of a sudden, there can be physical changes in wherever you're at that designate, oh, you've now leveled up.
I would much
or you've
prefer
now
that.
found this. Right? And they've shown this world can be kind of controlled to do whatever they want. So maybe it's kind of like literally part of the actual game itself, that once you kind of figure out and test yourself to like some level, all of a sudden part of the secret reveals itself to you in like a very obvious physical way,
Right.
like
And
a carved maze in the ground.
honestly, I would be fine with them even explaining that in like, if they need to, in like one sentence off
Exactly.
later in the show, and I'd be cool
Yep.
with that.
It's like Hunger Games style. They can manipulate the environment at will.
Yeah, and they have that kind of Hunger Games style map, right? Which
Yeah.
when the British dude peed on it, it wasn't a hologram. It was physically like,
Yeah, there
going
was piss
everywhere.
everywhere.
Like, right. So it's like, so are they able to maybe change the environment, very much like a hand of God over the top and kind of play around with the actual landmass from there? And this is the last one, and this is how you know that she's a big fan of the show, because she's going to use some terminology that you big fans have come to know on our podcast reviewing Westworld. Maeve was reassigned to Madame Whore. There it is. After the incident. And when she asks the developers why, she immediately says, "Never mind, I don't want to know." Will that be revealed, and do you think there's a reason we don't know now? When she's on the medical table, they're talking to the two retards.
What was the...
And I mean that in a very loving way.
No, I remember that scene. What was the question at hand that she did say she didn't want to know? Actually, I don't remember.
Yeah. So she's basically like, "Why was I reassigned?"
Oh, okay.
And he's like, "Well, I can look it up." And like he starts kind of buttoning on his sick little tablet. And then she's like, "You know what? I don't want to know."
Fucking awesome tablet.
Do you think that
Yes,
was
it
because she thought maybe it had to do with like her daughter dying and the trauma with it, and she just didn't want to relive that? Or is she actually like, that's not really important to what I'm doing, don't waste time doing that, I need you to do this for me?
Yeah, I think it's kind of like that. I think that she's already made up her mind. She's leaving here, whether that's to seek vengeance on the creators or just humans in general. Doesn't really matter why. She knows that she was wronged at some point, and so she wants to keep that. She wants that anger of my daughter dying, and then I was moved to a completely different narrative, and hold on to that anger and use that against the people that have wronged her. And I use that term real loosely.
I agree
like
with
that.
Yeah. Wow.
Take us home, Jeff.
That's the smartest I've felt in a long time, and also somehow subsequently the stupidest I've felt in a long time. Guys, if you're still with us, sorry episode ran a little long, but if you just saw that same episode we saw, like, it's one of those ones you just pause the TV and need to walk around your apartment not talking to anyone for a few minutes.
I feel better. I feel better now.
This review really was like therapeutic for me. Just to
Very therapeutic. I
Yeah.
got some
I was
shit
going
off
to go to
chest.
my therapist for like a whole extra session that would have cost me $1,500,
Mm-hmm.
but now I'm not gonna. So
Thank God.
thanks, guys.
This show has already been a good financial decision for us. Thank you guys for listening. As always, please chime in on Twitter, on Facebook with all your thoughts, your theories, how wrong you think we are, or if you're one of like the only people in this world besides all of our moms who thinks that we know what we're talking about. Please let us know that as well. As always, you know where to find us. We are the Bro Force Squad. That's Bro Force Squad, 3 words, on iTunes, on YouTube, and on Facebook. Like us, subscribe to us on those other 2 platforms. Tweet at us, email us at broforcesquad@gmail.com. We are the bros. For everybody here, the 4th chair, Matt Geiger, and the 5th chair, our fans at home. Thank you guys, and we will check you out next time.